This week in Hospitality Marketing Live Show number 257. And president and accountant for Early Start Green Room Conversations, Miss Adele Goodman, who is currently in, where are you? You're not in New York right now.
I'm not, but I'm with the Library Hotel Collection, and I'm working on some reputation management training programs on the side.
Awesome. Also with us, Mr. Edward St. Ange from Flip2, who saves the world one comment at a time. No. And Miss Tammy from Milestone, Tammy Colorado, sorry, from Milestone, who is their brain power behind some really cool stuff, which hopefully in the future we're going to be learning about some new stuff Milestone's going to be doing, which they already do a lot of stuff anyway. So it's kind of like, icing on top of a cake. So thank you everyone for being here. And I think we did have Dean temporarily, but I think he's having either
AV issues. Yeah.
Or he's trying to join from, he was camping this past week with his kids. So maybe he's in the briar bush with, his phone or something, trying to do a remote broadcast or something like this. But with that being said, I know we got Robert's list very, very late. We were supposed to have a wonderful co-host from the Westin, the executive chef from the Westin Denver. However, unfortunately, he had personal issues, medical. His family had to go to the hospital, so it kind of threw it into a spin. And we wish his family the best. Hopefully, it's not as severe as it is, whatever, and that they recuperate quickly and so forth. But hopefully, we'll have him back to the show, because I really want to get more F&B component into this, because we're all affected by what's going on, and it would be an interesting piece to put into it. Tammy, are you on the Tinfoil Hat Society Facebook?
And yes, for those of you who don't know, when we talk to each other, we call ourselves the Tinfoil Hat Society.
I don't think I am yet on the
we need to bring you on board. Adele, are you on that with us as well yet? No? Oh.
Am I invited?
One of the reasons why we're not worried about Robert being with us is that we now nickname him the Grim Reaper.
Yes.
Because he's so involved with the data, because of Focusrite and doing what he's doing with JD Power and everything else. He is throwing stats at us of what they're doing for their modeling at different markets. And it is like, oh my gosh, you're just waiting for hailstones and brimstone and apocalyptic whatever's, because the data he shares with us is like, ugh. So we call him the Grim Reaper. But he did put up a couple of interesting things. Well, actually, Tim did today, and he's not joining us. He did the last minute client thing, where the USA Today, their article. I was going to post that up. I don't want to start the show in the negative, but it was a big bomb drop. Let me pull this up. But basically, they're saying don't do any travel. No drive market, no nothing. Don't go anywhere. That's the article.
Thanks, USA Today.
Thank you, USA Today.
always so supportive of the travel industry. Appreciate that.
I'll pull that article up with it, but we are facing that. I mean, we're not even past the first wave. I mean, people say, "Oh, this is the second wave." It's not the second wave. Everyone keeps referring to that we never got out of the first wave. So, we're facing the fact that we are now worse ever than we were for the first 3 months. So it's kind of like wasted days and wasted nights. For 3 months, we hit ourselves, and what good did it do, right?
Except for making us all a little bit more weird.
Well,
already started far on that mark.
Is that possible for you, Ed?
No,
I don't think it's really. Here we are.
My weird dial now has extra numbers.
Here we are. I'll put the article link up for it. That's the USA Today article. They even did a cute little animation. How to plan for your road trip. Don't go anywhere. Just stay in the car.
Here's my challenge with this is, first of all, there are safe trips that can be had. There are things you can do to protect yourself. The problem is the reports I'm getting from our hotels that are actually doing fairly well right now is travelers are completely acting like nothing is going on, and they're not protecting themselves. They're not. And quite honestly, they're getting mad in a lot of cases that the hotel has precautions set up to protect them. Now, that being said, go to the beach, go to a national park, go somewhere that, gives you the ability to, create the amount of safety that you're looking for based on your, feeling of what your risk is in this situation. But to have a media outlet come out and just say, cancel your summer vacation. I mean, this is more sensationalism in the media. which unfortunately we see everywhere. And I hope if any good can come out of this craziness is maybe on the other side of this, people will start realizing that the media does not at all hold itself responsible to passing correct information. I was actually reading an article this morning that it was Tucker Carlson's lawyers are arguing that he has no requirement to tell the truth in what he does because everyone knows he doesn't. And listen, it's nice to actually hear that conversation happening because the news networks are not news networks. They're opinion networks. They're like this show. This show is opinion. And, so, this is hopefully something good that will come out of this, but I look at this USA Today article and I think this is, fear mongering and is not taking into effect that you can travel safe.
Yeah, but I think that you made a good point. It didn't say, here's your safety level in this kind of a situation, this kind of a situation, or this kind of a situation. But, Expedia also said that most of their revenue drive and most of their demand is going now to the private home rentals. And it makes perfect sense because you want to have a vacation, you want to have a pool in your backyard, but you don't necessarily want to expose yourself to that many other people. Probably camping and things like that are much more relaxed. But as Stuart said from Fuel Marketing the other day, the early adopters are the ones who are brave, and they're not going to be wearing a mask because they feel invincible.
Yeah, and but the challenge with all of this is, first of all, I mean, living in a state that is currently skyrocketing.
Mhm.
If you look at contact tracing, there haven't been a lot of hotels discussed in this. It's been actually a lot of it's been around bars. And which makes sense because what do you normally do if you're wanting to go out to a bar? You're generally going to one that's lively and busy and loud, which means you're screaming at each other, which means you're spitting on each other. Then you're drinking, which means you're not paying attention to how far away you are. It makes sense to not have bars open. And it looks like our state's decision to close the bars stopped us from, going even crazier high in our cases. But, we need to be realistic about what kind of businesses are dangerous. And honestly, I don't see a hotel with all the data we now have. I don't see a hotel as being a really high risk. If you are worried about it, wear a mask. That
Right.
it's that
not
simple.
the hotel, it's the behaviors of the individuals in the
Right.
hotel. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so
And what you do during your stay.
Yeah. So
Right.
don't go to bars.
right. And don't swim in the pool. Or you could because maybe chlorine kills it, maybe it doesn't, depends. So
Well, as long as you stay 6 feet away, right, in the
Right.
pool.
But
Yeah.
maybe 10.
and that's
Maybe
the challenge, right? I mean, people don't travel to social distance, right? They
Right.
travel to go to beaches and go to bars and go to restaurants that they want to go to. And so there's this, and I was moralizing on our little group chat this morning about how if Texas, or not Texas, if Florida, Arizona, and South Carolina are at the top of the list, and we're all in the business of helping hotels encourage people to travel, is that really a moral undertaking for us, right? And so it is, and I hate to bring that in. I know it's heavy duty, but we're all professionals, and it's something that we cannot just ignore. But we all struggle, hoteliers and all the rest of us struggle with conflicting messages from government entities. And so, like we just said, it's not the building, it's not the pool, it's not the resort, it's not the park, it's the people and how people behave. And hotels can, and through all their digital marketing and their advertising, can do everything they possibly can to encourage good behavior from their guests to keep that spread down. It is all on individuals to know and understand they're part of a community, and that by behaving in certain ways, they can help things get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also, some of it is going to solve itself. I mean, I think that there's the almost responsibility in some cases with the hospitality industry to be able to safely welcome guests who do decide to travel. But I don't know if you guys saw the latest Longwoods survey that just came out. HSMAI just kind of pushed that out. But 3/4 of people are now saying that they're changing their travel plans because of coronavirus, since all of the news about the spikes and things of that nature. So it's really, it's kind of interesting to see that, because I think, and that's what I mean by solving itself. If people are feeling unsafe about travel, they're just not going to travel. That, of course, creates a host of other issues for us on the business side.
Right. There was something else this week. I tried to find it again this morning, where there was a study about there's an uptick in negative hotel reviews, and a lot of the content of those reviews were about social distancing, about there not being enough social distancing, about staff not wearing masks. And those are specific to the time. They're not, and they weren't particularly about cleanliness. It was more of behavior, of individual behavior at the property level, either about staff or about other guests.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're hearing a lot of that, where people are upset at how other guests are behaving. I mean, it's the same way, we all have those people. You walk in a store, you're like, well, why aren't they wearing their mask, right? And so, and that's creating this deluge of negative reviews. And then you also have these people that, why are you forcing me to wear a mask, right? And kind of back to, I think, your point on there, or maybe it was you, Adele, talking about how we've heard so many different things and conflicting views from our government leaders and our, should we wear masks? Should we not wear masks? Should we do this? Should we not do this? That it's almost just become this political issue versus this, like, what's best for the country and the health and safety.
There's no almost about it.
Yeah, well, trying to keep politics out of the conversation today.
Right.
But so, how do we get back to how do we communicate to travelers that it is safe to travel? And you're right, this USA piece I've been kind of reading through as we've been talking, and it's very fluff piece. You've got a couple people like, I don't think it's safe to travel. Well, let's publish an article around 3 people, right? Like, or I didn't think it, was safe to travel internationally. What if people don't wear a mask? So I canceled. Well, and then the airlines canceled my trip. Well,
But
okay. I was supposed to be at Disneyland Paris today, and I'm not because I chose to cancel. But it was canceled for me.
Right.
But to blanketly state that no travel is safe. I mean, nothing we do right now is 100% safe, right?
Right.
People that contract from the grocery store. But I think it's up to us as individuals to determine our risk level, and it's up to us as business people and hoteliers to figure out how to communicate that it is safe to travel, and how to make sure that it is as safe as we can possibly make it to travel. Yeah.
Well, and to prove, that you can have safe behavior, I will say something that our governor said in the last 24 hours, which is, if it's safe to have a Home Depot open, then it's safe to do certain things. Because Home Depot has been packed nonstop through this whole thing. And guess what? The contact tracing, have you heard anything about major outbreaks coming from Home Depots or Lowe's or any of these, big box, home improvement? No. So it is possible.
It is, but it depends on what you compare it to, because most
Yes.
people aren't in Home Depot for hours, right?
Right.
Most people are in Home Depot, even now, probably time spent in big box stores is pretty quick, right? People want to get in and people want to get out. I mean, I went to Costco last week. I had a mask. I was in and out in 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I had a list, and I got in and I got out.
But do you meander around your hotel's lobby when you're on vacation? Do you meander around?
I used to hang out in lobbies to do work, to get out of my room, to so there.
Sure.
It's a. I think comparing you, and this where I think I'm sorry, Tammy, I know you don't want to drag politics into it, but part of the challenge to travel is a lack of consistent messaging from
Agreed.
entities to travelers. Not,
Agreed.
and that's just, I'm not, it's all sides everywhere, right? So,
Yep.
And it puts hoteliers. Sorry, go ahead.
but you can't compare going into a Lowe's and having schools open. You can't.
Right.
No, I agree with that. But I think you can compare it to staying at a hotel. Because I think you can have the same level of, one of the reasons, because trust me, people would spend extended times in a Home Depot if they could. But Home Depot is kind of making that uncomfortable. They're making it as, hey, you get in, get your
Because they
stuff,
don't want an outbreak.
and get out.
They
Right.
don't want an outbreak.
So if you think about that, you can do, if you're truly concerned, if you're a hotel that's open and your travelers are just not doing the right thing, then you need to think of creative ways without direct confrontation, because we've all seen enough videos of, the, what are they called? Karens, that lose their mind over, a business enforcing what is law in their region. But you don't hear about these things happening everywhere. And I keep going back to Home Depot and Lowe's because, quite honestly, I went and stood in line for 45 minutes just to get into the store to get something because I needed something, but also it was because I had nothing else to do.
But you were 6 feet apart.
Right, but this is what I'm saying is, but why was I 6 feet apart? Because Home Depot, without it being right in your face, created an environment where the majority of people felt what they were supposed to do.
Right.
So I think if you're a hotel that's concerned about this, you should start thinking through how can you give a feeling of what it is that people should be doing to help the masses figure it out, because they're just not.
Yeah.
And
I think that people don't go to a hotel to just check in and stay in their room. They go to the hotel to have experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference is that they're not in and out of a Costco or a Home Depot. They're going to want to be in a public area with other people, and it needs to be seated in a, like when they have the circles in the grass, one family here, one family here, one family here. And the problem with a bar is, I think you could have a bar open if it's set up with socially distant tables, for
and no actual bar.
family.
right.
No sitting at the bar.
And no
Sitting
sitting.
in the UK, right? There's a bar, but you can't stand at it and you can't sit at it.
Because think about how gross a bar is anyways. People are
Yeah.
facing all the drinks. And
Yeah.
it's
Well,
gross.
now we feel it. But to bring it to some terms,
No, it's always been gross. It's just now more people feel that way.
to me
not just
optimistically.
Germaphobes.
To me, optimistically, this breeds opportunity in marketing strategy. This breeds the opportunity to be very finite in our definitions of what we are offering, both for the safety to the guest and our team, but the availability of what's available for them to do when they're with us, should they have that cause to be with us. What is it that, it's not just a broadcasting rate and date. Here we are, we're open, we're doing these cool things. It's more about, hey, the Kids Museum 3 blocks away is open, limited amount of reservations required. Here's the link for that. This is the times that it's open, dates and rates. This is what you need to do when you go there. This is what you need to do when you stay with us. This is redefining what we're doing for hotels that have exterior hallways. Go figure. Now all of a sudden there's an opportunity of advantage for that.
Yep.
The what you're doing to make people to the point of, you're not just going to a hotel to stay in the hotel. Even destination resorts, there's limitations as to what you're capable of doing in the resort based on limited. Hey, Stu.
Wow,
Um,
Stu's back in the office. Look at this.
Oh, I've been listening, riding my bike in. I was listening. I have opinions.
Had to do it.
Whoa.
So anyway, I see it as being where this is the chance, because the cool part is now, unlike any other time, we have these tools that are capable of that very finite, almost market of one mentality. You can really be granular messaging, specific, tailored to the people that are most interested. There are still aspects of travel that are required. Sad as it may be, people are still passing for unfortunate reasons. People still need to go to funerals. Now they're available to go to funerals. People are still going to see convalescent support. There's people that are traveling to go see people they haven't been able to see for a while. There's family support, family engagement again. There's the strata of people that are defining what are you doing for your isolation. Okay, well, that's comfortable. That's what we're doing, so we can meet with you now. There's social groups that are actually categorizing themselves as to what they do in comparison to what you do for distancing, and you feel comfortable doing distance engagement with them. So you do have friends that come over, but they sit on the other side of the room, but you know they're not bringing anything in with them because they're doing the same thing at home that you're doing. Other friends, not so much, but you might meet them in a public place. We're creating all this strata of criteria now for engagement that has to infiltrate into our marketing as well, that we have to begin to redefine what we're offering so that people up and below what we're doing feel comfortable coming to us and give them the reasons of why they need to come to us. So to me, it's opportunistic for the current circumstance. By all means, I'm not saying this is
And I think your physical experience, there's opportunities. First of all, if you're a hotel that has personality, I'd be doing funny things. I would have funny signs up that make humor of what we need to be reminded of. Because again, there's just a human behavior is don't tell me what to do. American behavior is don't tell me what to do. However, people appreciate cleverness, they appreciate humor, and you can subliminally get a crowd to behave a certain way if it's prevalent enough and if it's something that would draw their attention, which I think if you did something with humor, you could absolutely do that.
To that end, one of my hotels in Indianapolis, very creative GM, she did the video where when somebody walked in the door without a mask, she's like, stop, and they did this dramatized video, and it was really cute. They have a sign in their elevator that says must hold breath till 3rd floor. 4th floor, you're allowed to exhale. 5th floor, only if nobody's in the elevator can you inhale. Good luck. And they just
but that what that is doing is it's not just being funny and it's not just showing humor. It's reminding people that this space that you're currently in is a space you should probably be thinking about. So, and you're doing it in a funny way.
Right. In the beginning, the brand marketing was all about cleaning, right? It was all about how clean. They all raced to, hook up with a partner, Clorox or the Mayo Clinic or whatever, to ensure to be able to, inspire some confidence that their rooms were clean. But given sort of where the negative reviews are, they're really less about cleaning and more about the behavior of guests, the behavior of staff, and social distancing. So it seems to me that it's probably time for cleaning is important and ensuring, letting guests know that things are clean is good. But it seems to me with the spread of the virus still ongoing, probably another message that needs to be gotten out there is how we are managing our public spaces. What are, how we do, like people are fine going to Costco and Home Depot because they know, and Costco was the same, right? I didn't have to wait in a line because I planned my visit, right? But they were counting people as I walked in. There was a clicker guy there, and they were ready. And so I'm confident. I'm okay that I'm not gonna, that Costco is doing what they need to do to keep me from catching, from them being a spreader. And I think now start thinking about that is how did they inspire that kind of confidence? They can go to a hotel.
Well, I think that there's like a fundamental misunderstanding that's going on, and it's really prevalent in the USA Today article, and that is that places don't spread COVID, people do, right? Mm-hmm. People's behavior is what spreads COVID. If you are someone that goes anywhere where you apply common sense, your risk of contracting this disease is very, very small. But if you go and behave like a lunatic, like a lot of people are, so I'll give you an example. Right now in Myrtle Beach, I've been speaking for weeks about how great we've been doing, right? From an occupancy standpoint, we've been going gangbusters. Then in the last 2 weeks, there's been a lot of negative press. And if you read the articles, it's articles like this group of 100 people went and rented a big house and shared it together, and they all came back with COVID. Darn you, Myrtle Beach, for giving us COVID, right? And it was Myrtle Beach was painted as the bad guy. It's like, no, the 100 idiots that shared a room together and all went out and partied every night. Those are the people that spread COVID. It isn't the place.
But I'm gonna challenge you on that. I'm gonna challenge you on that and say if Myrtle Beach in its marketing makes a big deal about how open it is, and there's lots of great pictures of people on the beaches, then
That's
yeah,
not the advertising. The advertising is travel responsibly. We are here, enjoy open spaces, but when you come here, travel with a face mask, travel. So they're very deliberate. They're not saying come here, woohoo, party,
right.
because
The
you know that
entity
would
is,
be irresponsible.
right. The entity is, but people's posts on social media may not be, right? And so, you know, the marketing is not
But again, that's humans. That's
Right.
your
That's
travelers
people.
doing
It's
that.
not
That's not
right.
marketing.
exactly, but it's still,
Right.
I mean,
but to Stuart's point, Myrtle Beach as a DMO can do really responsible marketing all day and all night, and I'm sure they do. But that only counters to a certain extent individuals posting on their social media about how fun it is in Myrtle Beach, and you know, look at this great house that my 100 friends and I rented. So it's
Right.
like,
you know, I think we're kind of struggling with three crises right now. We've got a health crisis, we've got an economic crisis, and we have a PR crisis where literally, to your point about this USA Today article where it's three people's opinion, it doesn't matter. It was published by USA Today, and so at least 75% of people who read it probably are going to take it as fact and make decisions based on that information. And I think that, again, to Stuart's point about Myrtle Beach, it's unfair that the behavior of one group of people, no matter how large it is hurting the entire destination. But regardless, we're in sort of a war for the consumer's mind
Yep.
and mindset, and how we get that across through our marketing.
And it's being hurt because people in positions of authority, and that is people like the USA Today media, regardless of whether it's an opinion piece or not, like you said, Lily, people read it as fact. But then you have state governors running their mouths about stuff they have no scientific backing to say, don't go to Myrtle Beach.
Are you
will
telling
catch,
me
you know?
politicians are talking about things that they
Hey.
know nothing about?
Yeah, but
What?
they're having an impact. The day that the West Virginia governor came out and said, Myrtle Beach, don't go to Myrtle Beach because you will catch COVID, our cancellations started outpacing our bookings because of one idiot man, and I will call him publicly an idiot for saying that, with no thought of what impact that's going to have on a lot of businesses. Same as USA Today.
Did he make
didn't
that
think about the
statement?
financial impact.
Did he make
Yeah.
that
Yep.
statement from a Waffle House, like other policy statements that he's made?
Probably so, right?
But
so
Stuart,
so
you're
I,
not
I
voting
think,
for him, so he doesn't care.
well, that's just true. But the West, you know, it's just frustrating that there's so much misinformation and people in positions of authority that have a duty, I think, to spread correct information, not just spread propaganda and opinions, are abusing that position. You know, they're not shows like this. We can say whatever we want on this show because no one really takes it as fact. They know it's a bunch of talking heads, and that's its position. But that's not how people see USA Today. I'll see the governor of West Virginia. They
Stuart,
listen
you
to those
actually have
people.
Holly disagreeing with you, just so you know. You know,
She's wrong. Sorry, Holly.
Holly, you can come on the show and kick his butt. Go ahead. It's okay.
Come on, Holly. Bring it.
They have an extremely high test, test positive rate on their testing in Arizona.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fact, right, based on the statistics, that you are more likely to get COVID in a place that has, I don't remember whether it is, I don't remember how high it is, but in New York, it's less than 1% or about 1%. You are going to have, a different experience if you're in a situation with a lot of people than if you're not. That's just a fact. But if a hotel takes the time to say, help us keep this pool open, help us keep this beautiful resort going, let us be there for everybody by you doing your part and act responsibly. Wash your hands, use a mask, keep 6 feet apart, and we can all get through this together. And I think that probably people are doing it a little less boldly than as what they really should be,
Agreed.
because they don't want to turn off the guests that they have that are having a great time.
And that's part of this challenge, right? Is as a business that hasn't been part of the problem, right? Let's be honest, there haven't been many news articles out there that hotels have caused problems, right? you walk this fine line and this fine ethical line. Where does your responsibility lie? Are you more responsible for feeding the families that work for you,
Mm.
or are you more responsible for guest happiness? And guest happiness is literally leaning in the wrong direction, right? I mean, allowing guests to function the way they have been functioning. And Myrtle Beach isn't the only market where people are going crazy. It's happening all over the Florida beaches. All the beach destinations in Florida have seen this type of thing. I think one of the differences is I don't think, with the exception of South Florida, I don't think there are any as dense of a market as Myrtle Beach. Daytona, St. Pete, Clearwater, they're not the same density that Myrtle Beach is. And don't have the attractions like Myrtle Beach does. So Myrtle Beach is kind of a strange hybrid of a beach destination that, feels more like an Orlando than it does a Daytona.
But here's the thing, right? And here's where my problem is with information and misinformation. If you break down South Carolina by county and by city of where the hotspots are, Myrtle Beach is a broad term that covers the whole Grand Strand. It's 60 miles wide, right? Myrtle Beach is a city that's only, a few miles, 10 miles maybe. If you look at the cases in Myrtle Beach, it's very, very low. The cases in Horry County, the county of where Myrtle Beach is, are all outside, out of the tourist areas. It's
but that's
local areas
the,
where there's a lot of old retirement homes, things like that. The people are coming with COVID, intermingling with other people, and then taking it back with their whole cohort group. And then they're saying, "Oh, it's Myrtle Beach's fault." It's not the place; it's the people that are spreading it.
Yeah, but your marketing defined that space as Myrtle Beach a long time ago, even though it's county-wide.
Yes.
I understand
you're
that.
connected by name.
But
I agree. The point is, people can travel safely if they're responsible.
Right, and I agree with
the bottom
Stuart
line
here that, from a PR perspective, and Myrtle Beach has actually done a fairly good job on multiple sides of the issue. One of the things over the past weekend that I saw a lot of the Myrtle Beach group put out there was actually battling the false narrative that the news reports were putting out about these super dense collections of people on the beach, where Myrtle Beach was showing like shots from above, where you can see no one's near each other.
Right. There's so much use of those long lenses, right?
Yeah. The angle shot.
Distance, yeah.
Yeah, and so this is first of all, if you're a hospitality marketer watching this, one thing I would very much encourage you to do is, we are in an election year. You need to make to your politicians that are running an issue of bringing back ethics in media outlets. Because it's not just painful when it's about politics, it's also just painful in everyday life. I unfortunately live in an area that I get to see that firsthand quite a bit, because a Florida man is always doing something.
Usually Ed.
Yeah.
But I see how the media sensationalizes things on a regular basis because things happen here a lot.
We have three self-centered entities right now. We have the media, which is self-centric for self-preservation. They're looking for whatever they can report on to put themselves in the forefront. You have politicians that are self-centric into their election, not on the purpose of their responsibilities. And they have social media, which is self-centric to those that want to serve a podium for themselves.
Yep.
All three of them are racing against each other to see who gets the limelight for any particular topic. And it's not helping the overall.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's what's interesting. The
So you
weirdest
have to recognize the reality, right? Those three self-centered,
politically driven. They're all politically driven.
but they're not going away.
Right.
So for a hotelier, I mean, you can tilt against those windmills all you like, but the revenue need is now. So what do you do as a hotelier somehow, or as a marketer? Somehow there has to be a way. Smart marketers can help with this. Is being able to, because there are going to be politicians. I'm sure, Stuart, there are going to be more politicians coming out against Myrtle Beach, right? So accept that as it's going to happen, and what do you do about it? how are
Yeah,
you?
but they're shifting. It's not Myrtle Beach. It's Florida as a
Right, it's
state
anywhere,
now.
right.
They're attacking because it fits their narrative. We as an industry need to be in that fight together with one voice saying, you are wrong. Stop spreading this misinformation. People are the ones that transmit this disease, not places. And if people don't start traveling,
Yeah.
we're going to be dead as an industry. People
Right.
are already hurting, and we were thinking, okay, fall, we'll start to see some travel. We'll start to see some group business. It's probably not going to be till 2021 at this point because the media and the politicians are confounding a problem that was already bad, and they're making it a ton worse.
Mhm.
So a lot of destinations were looking at, oh, we're starting to recover. We got some hope. Now they don't. And this is going to go on for a
Well,
long time.
And I have news for you. Like, these outbursts aren't going to stop with Florida, Arizona, and Texas.
Right.
When New York finally has to figure out how to open up its public transportation again, they're going to have a huge outbreak from that because public
Yep.
transportation is right there with bars. You don't have the ability to socially distance on a subway.
Or schools. When schools open up in the fall and
Oh,
those
yeah.
schools are going to open up, forget it.
They're going to close right back down. I mean, and it's funny because everyone knows it's going to happen because you have the same exact problem that we have with travel, which is people are inconsiderate. And you're going to get that person who knows their kid's sick, but just feels like they have to go to work that day. And it's going to turn out their kid has COVID. They just, completely closed down a school, probably also closed down their employer.
So
Yeah.
we as hotels need to look
Who
at
is
the
that?
long term now, right? And say, we can't tolerate bad behavior because it's going to cost us our very livelihood in the long term. So we all
agree.
have to say, hotels have to operate during a pandemic. We can't wait until this is over because
Right.
a lot of people will be out of business. We have to learn how to adopt and say, we're not going to wait until it's over. We're not going to wait until the new normal. This is the normal we're operating in. And we have to find a way to make money now because if we don't, we're screwed. All of it.
Doesn't
Yeah.
that
I think a bigger concern reputation wise is if people are getting sick at your hotel. If you can really though dig down deep and find everything that you can do to make a safe environment that people will naturally go to, as Ed was saying, if you can say, look, we did everything we could, but we can't completely guarantee your behavior. You have to see if you look at a crowded beach, you have to say, you know what, that's a little bit too crowded for me. I'm going to try at the end of the day when the sun is going down and other people are leaving, or wake up earlier or something like that.
So,
And-
tell Holly she's wrong. Tell Holly she's wrong. Go ahead. Tell her she's wrong. Hi,
Yeah.
Yolanda Carroll.
And right now.
But I will say real quick too, again, going back to the funny, like if I was a hotel and I wanted to ensure that I wasn't going to be complicit in the problem and I wasn't going to be made an example of, this is where you need to get creative on enforcement. And enforcement doesn't need to be a security guard. Enforcement could be funny. Enforcement could be a socially distant ninja, or someone who's just literally going through reminding people like, "Hey, you got to break it up, folks. We want to be able to host you again." It's one of those things where being creative would be your friend here.
So here's what you should do. Ed.
I'm
You should
hearing the
dress
feedback.
Yeah, there's a feedback somewhere.
I think it's Holly.
Yeah,
It's
when
Holly?
Holly joined.
Yeah.
Hey, Ed, dress up in a poop emoji and go around being the party pooper to all these hotels.
I think that would be, but that would be funny, and people would get less mad at it.
Yep.
Because you're bringing a sense of humor to a situation that
Yeah, we need levity right now.
no one
Okay, so I have a weird idea. Just they said I thought about this earlier on when they were talking about the schools mandatorily opening, whatever that is. All these hotels have conference spaces that are being underutilized. What would be the potential? And a lot of criteria as to the age of the kids, probably high school, middle school at best, whatever. If you opened up smaller nested classes in conference areas and allowed your banquet to service them with food and have it as a negotiated contract for satelliting out the density of your school so that there's other places that people could have classes at that would be fed and all this other stuff, and it'd be a negotiated rate with the school system and so forth, so that these classes can have satellite offices. Not that they're always going to be there; they can be brought into the classroom on alternate days, so they still get the the legitimacy of the campus. But maybe diffusing a little bit of it, so that if something does happen and they have to lock something down and clean it, everything, it doesn't destroy the whole school attendance at any particular point. They have alternate places to redistribute.
And actually, the best places to do that are the hotels that aren't opening to guests, and there's a lot of those in a lot of markets.
Like I'm saying, yeah, I don't know. It was just a weird idea I had yesterday when I was talking to some people.
That's a really smart idea, because I mean, I was talking to a hotel over in Holly and Lily's neck of the woods that, like, the only thing that's kept them in business is the Army Corps of Engineers staying with them. And so government is a viable path. And going to the school board and saying, hey, we have all this convention space. We have all this space that we're not going to use for its purpose, but would make a great solution. And oh, by the way, we also have the furniture. We have all this stuff that we can set you up. The biggest challenge there is going to be is security. Because I got to be honest with you, especially in Florida where human trafficking is still an issue, I wouldn't feel comfortable having my kids at a hotel without me.
Mm.
So you'd need to create a way to ensure that kids can't go into areas they shouldn't be, and people shouldn't be able to get into where the kids are.
Right. I mean, there's lots of logistics. There's just like one of those.
Well, I think you could
We got
do
all
it.
this dead space, so what the heck? Why can't we collaborate on some sort of coordinated, whether it be rotated through multiple hotels, or as you're saying, conference centers that can be divided, whatever, means and methodologies of diffusing that. Because again, going to what Stuart has said earlier, it's about people's transmission. Nesting people together in one single location rather than diffusing them to multiples allows you to create that isolation of this happened over here, close it down, but it doesn't shut the whole system down.
Right.
Or
Anyway,
put convention centers, right? So where you can actually control in and outs pretty easily, right? And there's a lot of room there. And if group meetings aren't coming back for a year or two, then they're going to be sitting empty.
Yeah.
One thing I don't know if you guys saw. Did you guys see the breathalyzer type test that came out of Israel? If something like that can become mainstream quickly, it's a 5-minute turnaround test, and it's not a swab. That could help quite a bit.
I feel like that would be really game changing, because the people are already comfortable with, having their temperature taken, for example.
Right.
This isn't that much more invasive than that. So it would be very easy. I could see that happening at airports. Okay, you only get to come through security if you pass this 1-minute coronavirus test. And it would really, really cut back on the rate of infection spread. But it would have to be produced at such a massive scale.
Right.
In order to be cost effective.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
We're also not addressing some of the earlier aspects of it. What happens if you're tested and stopped? The contingencies of this. Wonder if you came out and you had a fever and you didn't know you had a fever, and you walk through a thermal tester and, hey, excuse me, sir, ma'am.
Right.
Over
And
here.
you turn them around and tell them to go stand in a group that's not near my hotel.
Right,
Right.
but no, I'm
It'll
saying
be like
you-
walking on Sunday.
because they can't get back on the plane to go home.
Thanks, Ed, for bringing that to still a selfish point of view. But yeah, but you yourself, you have to make these plans. These are contingency plans of your travel experiences. You may get somewhere and then on your return not be able to come back. You have
Right.
you have to have some backups to what you're doing as backups now, because these things can happen. You can contract wherever you may go if you do travel, because it's not just about going somewhere. It's about the ability to come back. That's why we talk about the tethered drive market, where it's not just about going short-term distance, being able to come home. It's also the ability to come home if you go farther than that. So, it's that plan B stuff. Like, do I get a rent-a-car? Well, don't get from Hertz. Sorry.
Dang.
So,
All right.
I want to hear Holly's opinion. So Holly came on specifically.
Yay,
to tell-
Holly! You got some long hair, Holly.
Oh,
I
it says,
know.
says Lauren with the 1950s like crooner haircut.
I'm going for the what was the guy out of Harry Potter, the evil kid?
Draco.
Malfoy?
Draco Malfoy. I'm going for the Malfoy.
Yeah.
How
Holly,
smooth.
bless us with your knowledge.
So it's really not my knowledge. It's probably my perspective. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
It's just my perspective in that I kind of feel like as hoteliers, we're like those mice that are on those wheels that are going around because we're trying to solve all this stuff. And one of the things that's been interesting is I feel like you guys all sell to the B2C world and I sell to the B2B world. And I don't mean our direct customers, I mean the customers of our customers.
Mhm.
And so my world is not coming back for a couple years. And so maybe that's the difference in perspectives here. And then my other world is that I freaking live in Arizona, where it's like living in New York City, in April. And so I really feel like until as a country, we get like the other countries that have brought down this infection rate, regardless of the vaccine, I'm not saying we need that, but until we bring our numbers down countrywide, because we're not individual countries, we're individual states that people cross, unless you live in Arizona, then you're not allowed to go anywhere. It's just, it's happening in Arizona now, it's moving to South Carolina. I mean, very soon you're all going to be in the same shape. And as long as that happens, we are the mice on that wheel.
Yep.
Unless we can figure out. So I think Lauren's idea of, all right, let's forget trying to get hotel guests into our hotels until we get these numbers down, because you're right, Ed. We haven't had those stories of hotels causing this because we haven't had the volume of customers that we're hoping.
But
we
that's
will.
that's actually not true.
In
There are quite a
isolated-
few markets that have run pretty strong, crazy numbers through their market, and you don't see the reverberation of contact tracing bringing it back to that behavior.
If their contact tracing is anything like ours in Arizona, we have no idea.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
believe
so
most
that's the
places.
thing is
Yeah.
it's, I
And-
can
and
only
I-
I can only speak for Florida, and I can tell you contact tracing in Florida, even with its flaws, was able to identify pretty aggressively large numbers of cases coming from very specific activities.
I was on the phone yesterday with a hotel person who had 3 banquets in their hotel, social distancing, the whole thing. 0 were wearing masks. I guarantee that, it was a wedding, it was something else, and it was in Cincinnati next to Kentucky. All the people were from Kentucky, although I'm sure it was Ohioans too. But anyway, that's sort of my point though. You're right, Stuart. It is the behavior of people, but for whatever reason, the people that live in the US just continue to misbehave. And so
Well, and
that's
again,
not
it's
going
the
to
type of
change.
people that are traveling now are more likely to be the people to misbehave. So we've
To
got to
misbehave.
try
And
to
so-
find a way to get less reckless people traveling.
So I think coming up with solutions like Lauren's idea, where, okay, let's build an infrastructure where we're using our space. I mean, I do believe until we get kids back to school, people can go back to work. And so, that's part of it. But I can't fathom, I don't have kids, I can't fathom sending your kid back to a school. Like, I can't imagine you would do it.
Well,
But
again, it has to do with, though, what steps has the school
the
taken?
school taken, yeah.
Right. I mean, because the bottom line is, like, I've had my kids back in summer camp, but we selectively picked summer camps that had really strong policy of control, and we've had no issues from it so far, and we're far enough in that we would know by now. So I mean, choice is one of those things, and I'm blessed that I have choice. So like my kids' school had their plan out almost a month and a half, 2 months ago on how they were going to, for people who wanted their kids to be able to attend, how was that going to work? And they had a group of doctors on that committee designing the safest ways to do this. They actually have reconfigured entire parts of the school to make isolation possible. So like Lauren's talking about, they're not going to have the kids go to 6 different teachers in mixed groups. They're going to keep kids pretty contained to the group of people that they're normally with, and keep them from intermingling with other groups. And I know part of that is with the hope that, okay, one group gets a COVID issue, maybe that only poisons two groups from being able to return, but it doesn't shut down the whole school.
Yeah.
And now public schools, that's not going to be possible. Especially, I mean, I look at Florida where most of our schools are over capacity as it is. Because of the rate of growth. And I have to imagine Arizona has a similar issue because of the rate of growth Arizona's had. It's going to be incredibly difficult to put public schools back and keep them there. If the concern, is, allowing low risk people to have a higher level of exposure. Because the schools are giving everyone a choice. If you feel like you're high risk, there's remote learning available. And remote learning is going to have the same level of education and all of that as people who attend. But there are people who are like, for example, if you and your family already had COVID, like you're gonna send your kids to school. Like if you're past it and you're done, why would you worry about it? You already had it and it already went through it.
Shouldn't, because there's no real evidence you're not going to get it
I
again.
was gonna say,
But-
Tom Hanks was just saying the other day that the doctors are saying they may get it again. So I understand where you're coming from.
Right, but if you were an asymptomatic carrier and you just found out you had it, how concerned are you? If you know you had it and you had no issues, how concerned are you with getting it again? And I don't even know how you could tell someone to be concerned
If you
with
live in Arizona, you're not at all concerned. So
Can I just point out, it's like
Or
two
Lily.
people from Arizona on here, two from Florida, one from South Carolina. It's like the three epicenters going on right now. Maybe the show is the vector that everyone's traveling from.
Actually, by watching this show, your chances of getting COVID are elevated.
So here's an interesting question from Mira.
We're
Mira
good.
out of Bali.
We're fine.
Yeah.
Well, let me
Mira
tell
out
you
of Bali
something
asked,
about New
wonder if
York.
you don't have a local market there, and she's from Bali, so yeah, duh.
In New York, I can tell you there's no demand, not for the hotels that are open. They're only finding emergency work. The hotels that have a July 31st opening date, not seeing any reservations coming in. The cancellations are still outdoing any reservations if there are any. And frankly, a lot of hotels, if you don't have 90% occupancy at 365 or higher, you're not, viable. So it makes more sense to be closed than to even open. And a class, not that many hotels have too much meeting space in New York anyway, but for hotels that are just guest rooms, they can't afford to take low rent for those rooms for people who may need them, because they'd have to take more out of their pocket to make that possible.
Now, fortunately for those hotel owners, the people who own those assets, New York is one of the most incredibly expensive and incredibly constricted real estate markets on many different types of real estate, that they have an opportunity to not be a hotel and not have it completely destroy them. So that's great news for the
That's gonna
owner. That's horrible news for hospitality workers. And I think you will see in cities like New York, and I wouldn't be surprised in cities like LA, in these really dense developed cities where real estate is insane. I would not be surprised to see hotel inventory drop.
It's 100% true in Boston.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It will.
Yeah, Boston. Yeah, exactly. That's
There's
another
already
one.
been announced properties that have already put out. The owners, the asset managers are saying, yep, we're done with hospitality. And in Boston proper, it's the same as New York City. We have a big hospital complex. There are a couple of hotels that are adjacent to the hospital complex that are serving medical workers. And there's a couple of hotels that are serving the homeless who are sick. They're run by the city. But then there's nothing. I mean, out on the Cape, there's some, so hotels are reopening out in the Cape. But not many. So the hotels that are open out in the Cape have amazing amazing rates.
Yep.
I mean, really high rates because many hotels have opted just to not open. And then out in Western Mass, out in the Berkshires, there's some openings as well.
But the ones I'm concerned most about are, the hospitality industry in cities like Atlanta, where, Atlanta, the way it's developed, it's very like Florida. And so you could even say the same thing for Orlando. You can't easily convert a hotel in one of these real estate markets to something else meaningful, because the hotels are not generally in the right areas to be able to have multiple choices of what to turn the asset into. Office is overbuilt in markets like Orlando and markets like Atlanta. So, just changing it to office space is not going to, get you a meaningful amount for the asset. And residential, unlike New York, people who live in Atlanta, people who live in Orlando have choices to live in much larger spaces than the average footprint of a hotel, for pretty cheap dollars. So you couldn't convert it to residential easily. So
You wonder how much this is going to hollow out those city centers, right? So as people say, yeah, I don't know that I want to. So setting aside New York, which is a different piece, but for Atlanta and Orlando, I mean, Atlanta used to have years, as an Atlanta native, years ago, they had a viable downtown, but then they didn't.
Yep.
And it was starting to build back up, especially with millennials wanting to live in town. But now, I read, people in their 30s who are starting to have kids don't want to live downtown anymore because they want more space. They want to live in a less densely populated area.
And you add to the fact that now the changing culture of being able to work from home and so forth has also exacerbated that to people making me make choices where they want to live and work. I know that Stuart's a huge fan of talking about Airbnb, not specifically about Airbnb, but more about one is I will correct that and say that I was wrong about an assumption with Airbnb. I thought Airbnb was going to suffer tremendously from all this because of people's lack of safety with the individual hosts.
I did too.
They would feel there's some inconsistency about that, and therefore they weren't going to be risking going to these places. Instead, the rebound that Airbnb is focused on is the ability to detail what they do at individual places by the individual host, so that people can feel more directly connected to what's being done to where they're going to stay. Plus, the isolation aspect of being able to stay in a single unit, not connected to other units. So it's kudos to them. They're showing us again from a hospitality perspective what we should already have assumed in our own conversation, which was we should be talking about all the things that we are doing from our earlier conversation to ensure the safety of our guests with the ability of standardization and so forth. And Airbnb is amplifying that. And I bring this up because a call that I just was on a quarantine with the HSMAI chapter in BC. There were some interesting revelations to all this. Airbnb is kicking everybody's butt in that market right now. Most of the hotels in the Vancouver city, it's like a lung. Everybody's leaving the city now that they can. Vancouver is on a level 3, and it's the only city and area and province in all of Canada that's at that level. Everybody else is at a lower level. They're still isolated. Vancouver's been doing a great job of keeping control of their environment. You can go to bars and restaurants, and they're very well controlled, and they shut people down in a dime if they're breaking the rules and everything else like this. They're very structured about this, and so they're able to exercise more travel. But that's not helping the hotels in the city. Everybody's leaving the city to go out to the country right now, but everybody's also expecting them to come right back again. After they've done their get out of town because I've been here too long, they're all going to come back. Plus, the people in the remote towns are going to come into the city as well. So it's like a back and forth. But the statistics that Amadeus pointed out, because they're connected to the airlines, there's still 15% airlift from the U.S. going into Vancouver. There's still
Really?
15%, yeah.
I thought the border was closed.
Yeah. Now, that's not to say all the airplanes are full, but there's 15% of all airlift coming into the Vancouver International Airports come from the U.S. Another 15% is coming international.
But is it carrying people?
But here's the thing.
15% of
Quarantine for 2 weeks.
So as I keep saying, every day that is the same is that day's normal. We went back to long-term stay strategies. Like forget it. We have the hotel they have up there. You got to stay 14 days somewhere. Stay with us. We have the kitchenettes and stuff like this. So we're going back to earlier strategies because we got flopped on our face with the pre-opening fail and then the reopening, and we still can't get people across the border, obviously. But there's still international lift. There's still U.S. lift. There's still people, whether they're essential personnel, medical personnel, who I don't know, but there is lift coming in. So
I think they're Canadians returning from Florida.
It could easily be.
Uh,
Go back, but there's a
How that work? I was on the phone just this morning with a banker who's in the States and has to go back and quarantine for 2 weeks before he goes. I mean, people
Right.
have to do commerce.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's these grains of rice out there still. Every market has these things that you can find and to say, okay, it's not going to I'm not going to get full by this, but if I add it with enough other stuff, I'll have a bowl. So, there's these fragments of things that
I
are
gotta
out
tell
there.
you again, unless you're a beach or nature,
Real granular.
if you're a beach or nature hotel, you don't even have to look that hard.
No.
But it does depend too, to the question out of Bali, on your market and how dependent you are on airlift. I was
Right.
just discussing with a hotelier in Hawaii yesterday as part of my research project, and what we're kind of finding is that you can make correlations between leisure destinations that depend on international airlift, and Hawaii is almost falling into that as itself. So we're seeing more similarities between Hawaii and, say, Cancun and probably Bali,
Mm.
as opposed to seeing, the US one way and other areas. Hawaii's kind of an outlier. And I imagine that Alaska would be the same way. There's just less domestic, meaning, within the state tourism. They don't go to those properties necessarily for staycations the same way that they depend on the airlift. So unless you have government or healthcare business, you're really in a little bit rougher shape than the mainland.
And that's where getting creative and trying to find those grains that Lauren's talking about, because there is travel. There's always some level of travel. Travel is too big of a necessity for that not to be the case. And then you just either have to decide, do you stay open and look for the grains, or do you close?
Mhm. True.
Boy, nice job, Lauren. This has turned into a real bummer of a show.
I did start out with the negative one, didn't I? I did not. I just slipped in halfway through here, and I'm like, what the? Hey, Dean, by the way, nice to have you on. So we need some uplifting one, I guess. I mean, it goes through there's still inspirational stories from all this process. There's still hoteliers that are doing great jobs. And I do like the fact that, and it's anything that Robert gave us in the list, but there are feel-good stories about hotels that have truly been community focused. They've really tried to inward their support as to what they can do for their communities. I mean, California, obviously, there's legalities to this and so forth, but some hotels have opened up to homeless, literally, where they've started housing homeless people, which long overdue in that sense. I mean, other than building homes on golf courses, I think that's the second best idea. But the idea of that we're now looking at that for the people that are not the I don't care, it's only me people, but the other people are looking at focusing on how they can help each other. What is it that we can do?
Have you seen HSMEI has started doing this thing where they're recognizing heroes in hospitality through the pandemic? It's really neat, where just individuals that have just exemplified the hospitality spirit and gone above and beyond. And so if you know anyone in the industry that you feel like has been a hero throughout this, other than Lauren and Ed, obviously, because they're always heroes, but anyone else other than those two, just reach out to HSMEI. They're doing a good job recognizing those folks.
Hey, Holly, I have a unique question for you, since it's a pleasure to have you on. With your training programs and everything you're going, are you seeing an influx of people that are like reinventing themselves or saying, you know what, I need a bigger toolkit?
Yeah, so it's really sort of interesting that, we've always had such a weird mix on the marketing class. The marketing class has always attracted asset managers who need to keep a better eye on what their properties are doing, down to property level marketing coordinators who want to upskill. But on the sales side, it's getting a little bit weird too. I'm getting more, I've had a revenue manager, I've had a marketing distribution person who feel like they need to learn sales now, digital sales in particular. So, but what I always have found interesting, the one group that never signs up for any training is general managers.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to be like negative.
Weird. Literally every other human resources, even. I just think it's curious. And obviously I don't see everybody, but I just think it's interesting.
Maybe GMs just don't
No.
like you, Holly.
Could be.
Not like
I do
Holly.
bash them. I do.
I don't know. I've
bash
come across a few GMs that love Holly, so I'd say that's not
I know,
true.
I was-
Across a few GMs are like,
I don't know
"You
how anyone.
Holly?"
I don't know how anyone could dislike Holly. So
I don't even know. Just like, yeah,
I
it
wonder
is-
if the class was offered instead of with, I know that you work with HSMA, but with the association the GMs would be a part of, and you said that it is a course for marketing for GMs, for example, or if it would.
Yeah, I mean,
That's right.
it's not a market that I particularly want to go into. It's just a curious observation. And previously in my sales training, I wasn't really aligned with HSMAI. It was, my network, and it was pretty easy to attract people. But I just always found it curious that the GMs, I guess that's not true. I have had one GM who sat next to their salesperson to keep an eye on them. The training.
If you have that level of trust, maybe you just need to look at a new salesperson. But
So I have this hypothesis of something that is possibly going to be a long-term impact on our industry. And that is, we have this defunding term that just seems to have popped up into our culture these days, defunding this, defunding that. And I was talking to a speaker that was putting together an approach to something. And I started bringing up the concept of we may need to defund our infrastructure, just from using the terminology because it's a buzzword. And the idea was this, that we went over and cut out everybody that did the work. Sorry, we did. We fired everybody that really did the hard work. And we kept the high profile personnel, the people that were the high salaried, supposedly tremendously experienced, seasoned people. They don't do work. They've been pointing fingers and looking at reports this whole time. And they're not the ones that do this stuff, but they're the only ones that are left. And now they're still paying those high salaries. They don't have anybody that's actually doing the trench digging. And they're being kept on payroll because those are the value assets. I mean, that's my senior VP of XYZ. I can't let them go. Meanwhile, I let go the junior VP or the junior supervisor such and such. And they were the ones that were toting the load anyway. So where in this process do we take this infrastructure of self-preservation of let's keep our inner circle tight and then we'll redistribute and redevelop our team outside of that to the, oh, shoot, did we keep the wrong people? And go back to the, hey, let's build from the ground up who does the stuff and let the people that do it exceptionally well assume greater responsibility upwards and keep only the people that know how to do that rather than the people because of their title or positioning. Because my frustration goes to my brand engagements. And I keep doing this as a soapbox. I am so frustrated with the lack of brands capability in this time. All of the brands. I'm not even being particular to any one of them. All of them are biting the bean.
Because all their people are gone?
Yeah, because all the people are gone.
All the people
I
that
got nobody
work
to talk
on
to
it.
on the other side.
I had
Even
this,
if I talk to somebody, I know somebody high in the food chain and they're still alive sitting behind a desk. I'm like, yeah, dude, can I do such as that? Oh, I don't know how to do that. What the hell are you doing? Well, when we get that department refunded again, I'll be like, oh, good. That's great. We'll just sit here and not be able to touch anything for the next 6 months while we're wandering and squandering.
Yeah.
So for me, I think there's a possible surgence of, or hopefully, a redevelopment is what we consider the priorities of what our infrastructure is within our organization. And we went through this when digital marketing began to get into its prime. When digital marketing was only 3 to 5% of your total contribution, nobody gave a care. Then we hit the wall with the GMs that, hey, I run a hotel. I don't know anything. I don't need to know about websites and internet. Remember those people? They're all retired and gone now. Because they couldn't migrate into the next edition of what their world is. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to hit another wall like that where we're going to hit into this level of you don't know this stuff. And I bring this up, Holly, because you say about GMs, we've all learned through training that we always talk to the lesser person in the room, knowing we're talking to the higher level person in the room. They don't know as much of it either. They have to act like they know about it. There's this threshold that people pass by with a title that says I can no longer ask dumb questions. I no longer can ask the question because I don't know it, because I'm in a room that I have to assume I know everything because that's my title responsibility. Those people we always talk to via the smaller person. I mean, I even literally have told GMs, hey, I know you already know this, but let me tell your guy, purposely in front of you because you don't know a heck of what I'm talking about. Okay, same thing here. These exec VPs, senior VPs, all these people that are, I know all this stuff already, they don't know diddly. They know what it's supposed to do, but they don't know what to do it. And so maybe there's going to be a reorganization where those people have to reevaluate their true value, or the people that own them, so to speak, are going to reevaluate their true value and say, you know what, we need lesser people that do more people than you doing what you don't do. So anyway,
Well, I think there's also a revolution in the way that revenue management and sales and marketing are being structured, but especially from the revenue management point, I'm talking with more and more companies that are looking at this commercial director position. In fact, our last podcast episode on the hospitality revenue management podcast was from somebody who's been sort of thrust into that role 2 months ago. Wasn't originally planned. So it's really interesting because I think number one, they're going to focus more on that. Number two, also on P&L metrics. And I feel like I'm beating a dead horse with these shameless plugs, but that's the episode right before that with My Place Hotels of America, who is blowing all of the full service operators out of the water with the advanced and innovative tactics that they're taking in revenue management and technology and building things within their organization. So I think that we're going to continue to see those shifts. And Holly, that ties right back to the type of people who are starting to sign up for your class, because people, it's a silver lining, I think, out of all of this. All of a sudden, people are waking up and not only realizing that sales, marketing, and revenue need to work together, but they need to understand each other's disciplines in order to create a truly cohesive team.
And we started seeing that even before the pandemic set in, right? We started seeing that overlap between revenue managers and marketing, digital marketing, and so on, because it was a necessity. If you're doing a digital marketing campaign to promote a flash sale or something like that, well, gosh, your revenue manager had better know what the heck you're doing with that, right? And there has to be that communication between there. To Lauren's point earlier, though, too, we've seen large corporate brands that have let go, and not picking on any one of them, but have let go of to the tune of 2,000 people per brand. And I keep on thinking, well, good grief, were those 2,000 people just not needed to begin with? And what were they doing? That, were they so dispensable that we could just get rid of 2,000 people? And assuming at least a few of them had a purpose in life. Granted, there might have been a little bit of TAFE in there that could get rid of, but assuming a few of them at least had a purpose, then sooner or later, as we get back to operational status quo, that's probably not the right word to use, but to some type of operational status quo, we need people to do those jobs, right? We're going to have to get those positions filled back in again. And so I think there's going to have to be a lot of overlap in training, as Holly was talking about. People are going to have to be multifaceted, be able to do more than just one thing in there.
Or the other approach that I'm seeing. So I have to say two things really quickly. Right before all of this happened, I spent hours and hours working on this article. I had interviewed 3 companies and their top people, a management company, a really big management company, and then a really, really big management company, their top people talking about this chief commercial officer. So I published part 1, which was the person I interviewed was Allison with Prism, Allison Handy with Prism Hotels. Parts 2 and 3, I can never publish because both of those people, senior VPs, huge companies, gone. And it's the chief revenue position. So that's the one thing I had to share. The second thing I had to share was I'm now training a group of some global salespeople. So these are the highest level of salespeople who are still employed. Because revenue managers are gone, they are keying in property inventory and rates. I mean, it's incredible to me that that's how they are spending their time, because there's nobody else to do it at the brands. It's a nightmare. But number 3, and this is the biggest shift that I've seen, is a lot of salespeople have been laid off and then rehired as contractors. And I think this is, I don't know if you guys have covered this, but I see this in marketing, revenue management, and sales. And I think it's going to last for a long time. And so those people it's not going to help us as an industry, because those people aren't necessarily going to learn the other disciplines. They're going to get really good at their one niche and work for that group for 10 hours a week. And that's it. So I think we're in for more trouble.
Well, I mean, Tammy, you see this from the agency side of things. When we went through this process, there was a purge of internal staff and external third parties, where people were just cutting off their third party relationships as well. And now you're looking at the fact that they're ad hocing people back into niche positions, and they're probably going to look at scaling down their third party relationships because they don't want to take on the assumed liability risk of finance for the long term sense or something. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right, but we're seeing too the exact opposite. We're seeing a lot of clients that have bare boned their staff and now they're desperate, right? Hey, we need some help. Can you guys do a short term, this, that, support hours type relationship?
Yep.
So we're actually getting
For
requests
hire.
for things that are very outside of things we would have gotten requests for 6-12 months ago. But there's either no one at the brand to do it or no one at the hotel to do it. And I'll, kind of to Holly's point, 2 of the 3 people, and I love Allison. I think she's brilliant, but the other 2, you didn't even get to publish the articles. Lauren, you mentioned that it's the worker bees that all got let go, and it's the higher ups that are there. I would argue that's not entirely the case. I've seen a lot of very senior, very smart, very good people at high levels that
Gone.
are not there anymore, right? Gone. I mean, it's for the first couple months of this, it was pretty much trying to figure out who do I know that's still here, and where did they? Am I not hearing from them because they're working 80 hours a week covering the desk, or am I not hearing from them because they're not working? And so what's going on?
True.
And even
yeah,
more confusing is the big global brands, well, they'll let VPs go in one region, but they'll keep them in another region with the expectation that those VPs they'll get more on their plate. So they'll keep workers in one region and VPs in another, and then give them cross-region responsibilities, which means that people are working now in regions they don't understand.
Yeah.
So we're that on Academy of Milestones, seeing that.
I won't disagree with that. But I also leave that they leave some person like last man standing or last woman standing on some circumstances where they've literally let go their whole peer level, and you got one person trying to do too many jobs. And again, I'll still cite the fact that one person still isn't fully qualified in facilitating what it is they're now ultimately the only person responsible for. So yeah, I do agree that there has been some deep cuts by all stretches. I don't think this is uniformly just the worker bees, but I think first cut were the worker bees. And then they went in farther, deeper, longer in that sense.
I think it's really going to be. I think it's going to be interesting one of the articles that Robert posted. We're really kind of coming up to a turning point at the end of July in 2 different ways, because on the one hand, if they're putting out more stimulus for employers, but they also extend the $600 extra unemployment and people refuse to return to work, I think we're going to see a wave of, because I don't think people are reporting when people aren't willing to return to work at this point. They're still trying to kind of keep that relationship, but I think if it's extended, we may see more of that happening, because I've talked to over 150 hoteliers now in the last month, and most of them, I'd say about 75% of them, are reporting a top 3 pain point of, I can't get labor. Sometimes we're not selling hotel rooms because we can't get them all cleaned.
Okay, since Lily brought that up,
right.
well, we used to deal with terminology of unconstrained demand, as a methodology of determining market presence and value, blah, blah, blah. Now the term's coming up, constrained demand. The inability to sell because of a lack of inventory offering because of restrictions by law and or by facility of resource, and optimizing what that is, because you can't just jack the rate because you have half the rooms available to sell. But by the same token, you may not have the ability to go past that threshold anyways. You have a constrained demand scenario at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, talking with luxury hoteliers, if they're in the right markets, luxury is actually doing pretty decently right now. And there's a large portfolio, I won't name them for confidentiality reasons, but it's a luxury portfolio. And they said that in the last month, their average ADR is exceeding last year's by $500 on average across their portfolio. And they're trying to slow down demand by raising the rates, and they're not even able to do that because the demand is so high. But to your point, Lauren, I mean, constrained and unconstrained demand have always been the terms, but you have to really think about your constrained demand as just having rooms out of order or, going through renovation, whatever. That's really, you're just working with a smaller box than what you really have.
Wow, that'd be a nice problem to have.
The $500 ADIC.
Okay, so I have this
There is that
rationale
point
that
where-
our industry is like the Castaway movie with Tom Hanks. Hear me out. We're flying along, trying to shave a second off of the other competitor, deliver a package. Next thing you know, we hit a storm. Boom, we're in the water. Don't know what the hell happened. Now we go over and we get on the raft, and we're like in the middle of nowhere. The world is upside down. What we used to be as normal is gone. There's no radio, cell phones, not just poof, we're gone. So we finally find this island. Like, okay, let's stop. Let's fire everybody and go over and save our money. We get on this island. Then we're like, screw this. We're going to take off. We take off. Boom. We hit the reef. We hurt ourselves. We climb back in again. We're back into the crap again.
So is
Optimistic story.
this show Wilson?
There is a Wilson involved.
Yeah, I was thinking
Don't
it.
talk to ourselves. We don't always get the same good advice. But anyway.
Bob agrees with Ed.
But the optimistic part of this is that we go over and we decide that we have to change our norm. We have to change our way of thinking. We have to change what it is we do. And we have to take the risk to just go out and do it and find a new way to get back to normalcy or get back to what our lives were. Let's put normal is not a word to use anymore. Get back to a lives that is sustainable business. So we build ourselves a little raft around the ocean waiting for the whale. Just saying.
I don't remember the whale.
Good analogy.
It was like one of those little weird things that popped in my head in the middle of the night when I was going through the joy of my knee hurting and I couldn't go to sleep.
So to
Changing
that,
logic.
do we at all want to shift positive?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
I'm
Make it positive.
I mean,
What do you have?
well, I mean, some areas are actually doing fairly well. I mean, I have quite a few clients that are now at a point where they're selling out every day of the week on what inventory they do have open, and they are achieving higher ADR than they've previously been able to during this time of year. And they're doing so without their staff getting sick.
That's
So,
nice.
I mean, it is happening in certain areas. I do think, and I was having this conversation yesterday, I think regardless of what happens with the outbreak, I think leisure just wants to come back. And so I think once there is a feeling of control, not even once it's under control, once there's a feeling of control in these on how these outbreaks get managed, I think you will see leisure just it's waiting to come back.
So, I mean, you saw the Longwoods research survey yesterday.
The 3/4 people are saying they don't feel like it's safe to travel right now.
The dip that it went backwards because
Yeah.
of the outbreaks.
Which
Yeah.
we've seen that, but it's not just because of the outbreak, it's because of the media coverage, which
Yeah.
circles all the way back to the
Ah.
beginning, which is where people are being propagandized that travel is dangerous. Travel isn't inherently dangerous. What you do while you travel is dangerous.
I'm sorry, Stuart. Every time I hear you make that argument, which I agree with, all I hear is guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Don't get me mixed up in that. But it's
Spoons
true.
didn't make me fat.
If I go and stay in a hotel and hang out on the beach or go to a mountain, hiking, I'm not going to catch COVID. But if I go to a bar and drink myself stupid, whether that's in my hometown or in Orlando, I'm going to catch COVID. So
Yep.
that's where I'm frustrated at the industry, right? I don't feel like there's a consensus of lobbying or of messaging or putting out our own narrative. We're not in control of the narrative. We're letting everyone else dictate it. Politicians who have agendas and social media has agenda, like Lauren was saying earlier. In the news media that has an agenda, where's our agenda? Where's it being represented? Why aren't the flags coming together? Why isn't Expedia, instead of trying to trick everyone into a really bad deal right now, why isn't Expedia out there promoting travel as safe? That should be their job right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not.
It's fear, by the way, is the answer.
And
Fear of what?
unfortunately,
Fear of being responsible if you're wrong.
And in the United
Yeah.
States,
We're going to be
I'm
out of
sorry,
business if we're
travel is
we
not
don't.
safe. We have to make it safe for people to travel.
Yeah, but see, Holly, exactly what you just said is the problem. Is not all travel is unsafe. But saying travel is not safe and we need to make it safe, first of all, everything all the brands have done to push this in-room cleanliness and all of that stuff
That's not what I'm talking
makes no sense anymore, because we now know that surface transmission is incredibly difficult. So I mean, the PR effort that's gone into putting that out there should be applied to some other form. And I do agree with Stuart that there is plenty of safe types of travel. I can tomorrow, if I want to go in Florida, which is an outbreak area, I can go to the beach and not come in contact with someone, which means I can go to the beach and not catch COVID. So that is me traveling and I'm not catching COVID. The challenge is there are certain types of behaviors that are unsafe, but we keep just saying travel is unsafe, which is just not true. Because if it was true, you would have news stories of actual situations where the aspect of traveling was the thing that caused this. Like going to this hotel caused you to get COVID. No, going and then huddling up with 100 people is what caused you to catch COVID. You brought the COVID in and you gave it to each other. That, like Stuart's saying, it's the people that are causing the problem. It's not the actual activity. The actual activity can be achieved safely if people will accept that you can't just go and act like nothing is wrong, nothing is different.
And those people don't exist in our country. They seem to exist in other countries, but in our country, those people haven't gotten there yet for whatever reason. And so until we can get those people to that understanding, we're just going to continually be on this wheel.
I think we're smarter than the problem, though, but we're not exercising our intelligence. I think that there is a reality that we can moderate, as you said, at our story. Here's a complex of two things. One is I had a client that came to me and said, look, should I get off of Facebook? Because I see all these big companies getting off of Facebook. I said, look, the Coca-Colas, the Nikes, and everybody else, they're using this leverage of the monies that they spend for the fact that they're unhappy, and they're trying to display this to Facebook as to how they're handling political ads and fake posts and all this other stuff. And they're doing this as a political statement for this. They don't derive a lot of their business from doing what they're doing. They're exposing themselves brand-wise to the platform, but they're really not deriving much of the business from that. So your little voice is not going to change in absentia by getting off the platform. The platform still exists with the audience that you're looking for and the targeting capabilities of getting to that audience. So if you want to not get business from this platform to make a political statement, that's your business choice. But I'm telling you from a marketing perspective, you need to be on this platform with the messaging you're doing. That said, from an intelligent point of view, Ed, you talk about going to the beaches and having the ability to keep yourself distant. This lack of communication that we're not allowing ourselves to have, dialoguing with the people that are directly engaged with us by doing videos, by doing live broadcasts, by doing persistent engagement, showing people that we're mitigating our occupancy. We're mitigating, hey guys, this weekend's looking great for us. We're not overly loaded. We only do 50% occupancy anyway. Having this persistent open front messaging for those people that are under the consideration of travel is that ZMOP moment, that when is it going to make the transition decision? Right. If you can keep that communication in the forefront in the way that they need to understand it and in terms that they can digest it, they're going to be more comfortable making these decisions that you're pointing towards. That it's not about the generalization of travel. That's sensationalized in the media. That's sensationalized by politics. That's sensationalized by social in general. It's the fragmentation down to the individual dialogue. We, as the product you're using, talking to you as the product user, this is what we're doing of how we want to make you feel comfortable by being openly communicative to you.
But I also think as a hotel, I think you need to experiment with how you are going to communicate prior to travelers arriving on what their responsibility is if they want to be able to continue to do things like this. And I think you have to be willing to put that out there. And I think you have to be willing to live with what that means. That means your staff better be practicing safety, because if you're going to put it on your travelers that they have to be responsible, they are all waiting for the second that they can catch one of your team members being unsafe. And I get that feeling. I've gone to a couple of restaurants here locally recently where people at the restaurant working weren't wearing face masks. It is the law here that you have to wear face masks. And it made me angry. it made me more angry than the idiots who walk in the door without a face mask and give the restaurant a hard time, because you're supposed to be setting the example. And if you are setting the example as a business, then you have the right to tell your guests that if you are not acting safely, you will not be allowed to stay here. And you have to be willing to do that if you want to be able to put the message out that traveling with us is safe, is we are not only holding ourselves responsible, we are holding our guests responsible.
And
Okay,
I
I'm going to drop off early,
I
but I think Valen has to drop off real quickly here. Valen, if people want to know more about you, where is it they can find you? I didn't get to ask Amy that last. We should. Yeah.
Norone.com, and I'm Valen.Perini just about everywhere.
Thank you, Valen, for the time today. Sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks,
Hi,
Fallon.
Alan.
Nice
Nice
meeting
to
you.
meet you.
And when we lost Tammy from Milestone, just so everyone knows, if you want to go to milestoneinternet.com, she's there. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt it.
But
I
you know,
really think that any negative reviews is much more likely to be caused by employees not doing what's right, which has definitely happened, much more so than complaining about what guests are. I think, I think that it's just the fact that the hotel or business is not doing anything at all to try to manage the situation is what the complaint is about. Actually, by the way, the TripAdvisor said only a few weeks ago, and things can change a lot in a few weeks, but only a few weeks ago, they said we're getting more positives and fewer negatives because people are showing so much appreciation for all the extra effort they can see that the staff is doing for them.
I don't know if you ever do this for fortune cookies. If you ever open fortune cookies, if you started every fortune cookie read as in bed, it always makes it for more fun. But the other is if you changed every time you use the word marketing to communicating.
Yeah.
It's not about selling at this point. It's about communicating. It's
and
about
who we're talking to, by
information
the
that's
way.
useful to the guest to make the determination of purchase. It's not about telling them what they want to buy. It's about telling them what they need to know about what they want to buy.
Right.
And that is a defining change in us. And it goes to what Lily, what you mentioned earlier. The revenue strategy is an intertwined aspect. Sales with Holly. I mean, the messaging is uniform. The methodology is uniform. Even operations, you have to include them in fulfillment, accounting, and their accountability as to progress and invoicing and everything else. HR is into the training and the type of staff that's needed for this. All of this is an intertwined. We've been harping on this for years on this convergence conversation. Now we use it as a baseline. It has to be the base existence. Without it, you're never going to succeed because you're going to false start in every silo that you try to start.
Yep.
And I think also not just the knowledge about what you want to buy, but how you want to feel about what you want to buy. Because I think that we are sometimes right now so knowledge heavy, and I don't disagree with that strategy whatsoever. It should be easy to be able to access that information. I've been a couple places right now where it's not easy to access the information, and you walk in uncertain of what's going to happen or what they're going to require. But I think that we are overlooking what feeling do guests want to have when they get there, because even though it may not be apparent, the media that is publishing these stories that are putting hospitality and travel into a bad light, they are making the customer feel something. It may not be a positive something, but we have to work even harder to overcome emotions like fear, guilt, uncertainty, and doubt with things that are positive.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where earlier
about making it humorous and making it engaging.
Right. And you can set an expectation of responsibility. I mean, this is the industry that was obsessed with eliminating straws and recycling soap. So obviously we understand that responsibility is something that we care about as an industry. Well, that applies now. If you're an open hotel, and I've talked to some of them that are conflicted. They're so happy they're open. They're so happy they're full, but they're really worried about if they're doing the right thing. Well, if you're feeling that feeling at all, then there are things you can do, and you can set expectations and you can set rules that you enforce, just like you do on everything else. Like we as an industry didn't seem to have a problem adding resort fees and allowing people to be mad about being shocked by their resort fee. So why are we as an industry avoiding putting some responsibility and some expectations on acceptable behaviors when you're on our property, and pointing out it so you can come back.
Mhm.
You know,
Let me
like,
reinforce that point, right? So we've been doing this travel study every couple of weeks to thousands of leisure travelers. We've been adding and changing some of the questions as we go. So I just pulled it up now, brand new information. We added a question this week. It was surveyed yesterday, and stuff's still coming in. So the question was, if your desired destination implemented a mandatory face mask restriction or ordinance, how would it impact your decision to travel? Okay, so we gave them three options. They could say, I would be more likely, I'd be less likely, or my decision would be unchanged. 44.8% of people said my decision would be unchanged, so slightly less than half. Okay, 27.1 said I would be more likely to travel, which leaves, if anyone's doing the math, that leaves 28.1% said I would be less likely to travel there if there was a mandatory face mask restriction. Now, I'm going to, politics aside, I'm going to call those people idiots and assholes, right?
But
And selfish
keep in
as well.
mind,
But
a lot of those are leisure travelers who've been wanting to get away, right? So I just returned from a camping trip in a state park in Nebraska. There were 20 people in this entire state park. No, we didn't have anybody wear a face mask because there was about 100 yards between you and everybody else.
Right.
Okay.
sure,
So
I get that, right? Depending
There
on
you
the
go.
circumstances.
but if you look
Depending
at
on the
most face
circumstance,
masks,
But if I'm in a hotel, I need to make a decision right now. As a hotelier, am I going to risk alienating 28% because it's the right thing to do and because it's the best long-term thing for my business and for travel? Or am I going to pander or lean into the politics, the rhetoric that people are telling me to lean into? Regardless of whether you believe face masks help or not, 75% of people are saying it's not going to impact them, or they're going to travel more likely if it is there. And it might actually stop the spread of COVID. You know, even if
You
you're
know what?
wrong, there's no harm in that. You've got to make a stand as a hotel. You have to make a stand and enforce that, knowing that you're probably going to alienate 28% of people.
and
That's
hey,
okay.
and here's the thing:
That's okay.
if
The-
your
the-
political views as a hotel is that you think face masks are a joke, then lean the other way.
The question is a little bit flawed, Stuart, because
Well, it's
you
also
really
agendas.
only have to wear the mask when you're within 6 feet. So if you're at your table, which is 6 feet away from others, no problem. If you're at your lounge chair, which is 6 feet away from others, it should be no problem. If you're on the tennis court, you're certainly 6 feet away from anyone. So if the question was, if it was mandatory to wear a face mask anytime that you have a chance of being within 6 feet of someone, I wonder if the result would change.
Yeah, we can soften it. I mean, I think it's implied. If you look at the places that have face mask ordinances, they're all very, very similar. It's you know, when you're in a confined space, you're inside, you can't socially distance and things like that. But I think what it's representative of is how polarizing a lot of this is. And you're gonna, regardless of your decision, right? If you choose to not enforce face masks, you're gonna lose about a quarter of the people. If you choose to enforce it, you're gonna alienate. What you
So you
can't
might
do
as
is
well-
dither and back and forth. You've got to
So
make
you
a
might as well
decision
be
and
on the
move
good
on.
side.
What's that?
So you might as
Well-
well be on the good side.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
make your decision on long-term viability of your business.
Correct.
And I will say again, you know, because I've even thought about this. Let's say you're someone who just thinks you're a hotel owner and you think face masks are jokes, then make that your thing. But
Yeah.
don't attract people. Like, be honest about it. Like, we are not going to wear face masks. You're not going to wear face masks. No one's going to ask you to wear face masks because that's what we're about. If you don't like that, don't come here. If you want to do that, you'll find a market for it.
You know, take a stand. Pick a side on that.
The problem really is not wanting to pick a side. And quite honestly, it shouldn't even be pick a side at this point. If you want to be able to continue operating as a hotel without interruption by your local government, you need to do something to rein in your guests. Because
And that's
I
where
agree.
it gets really tough, though, because you're in this weird situation where, hospitality is based on these tenets of warmth and all of that. And now we're turning into policemen in a way. Even when I was talking with the person in Hawaii, too, apparently they still have the 14-day quarantine, but travelers can still come in. So technically, they get some sort of, knowledge that the guest has a fever or they're required to stay in their room, and supposedly the hotel is required to report back to the government if they see people violating these orders. And
So
But
that's
that's okay. That's how we live right now,
just,
right? There's a
just like
social
the hotel
contract
has to
between
tell
people.
authorities if they witness someone
Right.
assault someone
Where-
else.
But
Like
I don't
it's
think that
Or
people
someone
are.
walking around naked, or someone making a loud noise, or there's a social contract between a customer and a business always, right? And if someone
But
doesn't
to
behave according to
to
that social
Lily's point,
contract, you have the right to not serve them or to report them to the authorities.
But
but to
Lily, you
Lily's
can
point, the
also
person
train
enforcing
your
that is the front
team.
desk clerk.
You can train your team and inspire your team and give them the skills that they need to speak to guests in a loving and disciplined way to show you're doing this because you care so much about them. Not just them, but all the other guests and their employees. So everybody has to work nice together, and you know what? And if the person is just the kind of person that just wants to get everybody else sick, then they don't belong in your group. Because
Right.
if you don't feel you have a responsibility to keep your guests safe, you at least have some responsibility to protect your employees.
and
You
by
don't
the
know.
way, you deal
not
with
put
this
there for 14 days.
you deal
Like-
with this all the time in other things. Like when guests complain about other guests being overly noisy and disruptive, you go and deal with that. It's not the law. You're dealing with it because you're caring about the greater good of the overarching amount of guests that are there, and someone is breaking the social contract. So, I don't think it's that different from many other things that hotels have worked into their policies that you're just not allowed to do when you come to my hotel. You're not allowed to do this. And if you do this, there are going to be repercussions. So, I think if you're one of those hoteliers that is worried about what your role in this is because you are open and you are near capacity, then my first answer to you is then you should be taking steps in a hospitality way to hold your guests responsible for having safe behavior.
And I don't
Part of that is
disagree with
setting
that, but it's
expectations.
so right. It's so polarized right now in a way that, I think everybody, to your point of the social contract, understands that if they make too much noise, they're probably going to hear from the hotel. And that usually requires a manager or a security agent or both to go to that room and have that conversation. In this scenario, it's so widespread. You could be talking about half of your guests that you need to enforce with. So to what Holly was saying, I don't know if everybody heard, but she was saying, it's front desk agents and people like that who are having to enforce this. And the reality is, even though it's minuscule right now, a Walmart employee got shot for requiring somebody to put on a mask. So there's what I don't see happening, because I sort of agree with both sides of the issue, but what I don't see happening is a big push saying, hey, we've developed a special safety training around, to Adele's point, how to talk to your guests in a respectful way, but also sort of lay down the law in a way that is safe. And here's what you do if you don't feel comfortable. And here, we have things for bomb threats and fires and things like that. But we've never really created a proper safety training to address something like this in hotels.
But to Stuart's point, you can solve a lot of the fear of the Walmart issue by communicating during the time of transaction and prior to transaction that you have a zero tolerance. Here's how it's going to go. if you're not falling in line with this policy, you will be asked to leave without refund. Because if you put it like that in the front end, the people who just are going to be a-holes are just not going to book with you, which will solve that problem. But guess what? That will also attract different people. So one thing we've definitely seen in the markets that have been open is every time scenarios change, a wave of people move out and a different wave of people come in.
Yep.
So if you're looking to play a role responsibly in trying to ensure that you're going to get to stay open, and you at all care about, not having the economy shut down, you should be thinking through how to discourage guests from being irresponsible. That can be done. That will cost you a certain audience. That
It is
likely will attract an audience who's currently not traveling because they know that other audience exists.
Right.
It is
That's who
remarkably
we need
similar
to
to
be
the smoking,
attracting.
non-smoking debate, right? Where
Right.
you'd have, and even most hotels are non-smoking these days, but there are still some hotels that do have smoking rooms because that is the audience they cater to. And
Right.
that audience likes that, wants that. But by catering to that audience as a non-smoker now, I'm not going to go to that hotel. And that's my choice. That's okay.
Right.
But at the same time, as we were trying to enforce those policies, you would see the little stand-up thing, the teepee and the table in the room that says, if you smoke in here and we have to deep clean it, we're going to charge you a fine of, I don't know what they, $250, whatever it is. Well, really conceptually, why couldn't you do the same thing with COVID? Because if you think about it, you got to take mask off in your room, obviously, but if you've infected a public area because you didn't wear a mask, now I've got to go deep clean that, steam clean it, whatever I have to do to it. Maybe the guest is responsible.
Well, it goes to a core of revenue thing is that you're looking for any business or the business that you have been built for. It goes to the revenue strategy. If you lower your rate too low, you get a certain crowd that you may
Right.
not want. For those who don't pay that lower rate and they want to, because they're paying a higher rate, have the experience that the higher rate would dictate. The same goes to, as you said, Ed, the qualification of this is what we do. Right now, we're exacerbated by the fact that the only people willing to travel are the people that are disregarding, for the most sake, these concerns.
They're risk takers.
They're
by
risk takers,
definition,
right.
they're risk-
And because we're so hungry to have any business, we're really rethinking our strategies of like, okay, maybe we'll just have to get anybody that comes in here. We're going to let it slide. But it's always that mystical number that most ownerships don't know, and that is unrecognized revenue or unrealized revenue. That if by doing this, you're not going to get this revenue number because you're not targeting them. It's that the bird in hand versus the three in the bush kind of mentality. It's like, I can get this revenue now, I'm doing this for the people that are traveling now. I know that there are people that wouldn't want this to be the case, and they're in the bush over there, but I can't worry about them right now because they're not traveling. And so we have to think that we have to create our standards. Adele, as you say with your TripAdvisor, there's standards. The team is a standard. There's a culture. There's a thing that we do, and we do it every day. We don't do it some days. We don't do it once in a while. We do it all the time.
Right.
And the same mentality of this project. You're going to create a safety standard, maybe to Dean's point, where it's like there's a penalty if you don't follow it because we have to enforce it so strictly. But we are making sure that we're prepared for the people that aren't traveling right now, but through what we do and how we communicate what we're doing, are willing to travel with us.
Yep. And that gives you the answer to how do you try and stay open. Going the other way, if you're one of those 13 percenters or whatever, and you happen to own a hotel, go the complete other way with it. Like straight up tell your guests.
28%ers.
The ones that said they
Yeah.
wouldn't travel, was it 28?
Yeah, 28%.
Okay. So if you're one of the 28 percenters and you own a hotel, go the other way with it. Straight up tell your guests, we will not enforce mask policies. We
But
will not
understand
enforce.
the consequence of that, right?
Right.
Short term, that might benefit you, but long term, that's going to damage the industry. It's going to damage your local market. It's going to force governments to step in, and it's going to hurt your business in the long term.
And what
That-
about
that's
your
just the
employees?
Our business.
Are they cool
Right.
with it?
Are they?
that's what you have
are
to
the
live with.
employees then liable?
But that's what you have to
Or
live
is the
with.
employer liable, right?
So it does sound like this should be an easy answer on what you should do. But at the same time, go the other way if you want to go the other way.
It's too political. Don't go the other way. It's suicide. You need to be more strict. You need to enforce.
People aren't going
Whether
to
you
go.
believe it or not.
Hey, I am trying to do what the news stations don't do, and I'm trying to lay out both
Look around.
scenarios.
Here's
Okay.
the problem. The hospitality industry needs to control the narrative. And unless
I
we
agree.
get behind something like, hey, hotels are going to enforce in common areas face masks, we're not going to convince people that travel is safe. We have to do that.
And I have good
Because
news
right
for you.
now, well, hold on. There's a bell curve, right, of people that are going to travel at different points. We've already burned through a majority of the risk takers, these early adopters. We've got to get to this big majority, the early and the late majority of people, which are more risk adverse, and they're not going to get activated when they're hearing constantly from the media, traveling is dangerous, traveling is dangerous. We have to turn that narrative around and say, traveling is safe. Hotels are making it safe. Now is the time for you to travel because there's other benefits. You know, the price might be lower. You might get to experience new things. The hotel's doing extra stuff for you. That's the message the hospitality industry needs to get out, because otherwise we're going to burn through these reckless risk takers and we're going to be sitting with no one looking to travel.
Or
And then
worse,
Being an idiot when you travel is
well,
dangerous.
while you're burning through these reckless risk takers, you're going to get shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask Stuart a question with this. Do you feel like the Bob Gilberts, the Cecil Stantons, the Chip Rogers, is this the chance? Is this their chance to put a stick in the sand and say enough? We as an industry, as much as what we represent, this is what we feel. We're recommending to everybody in our industry, stop with the ambiguity, stop with the randomness, stop with whoever walks in your door. Let's create the standard of safety that will promote, self-promote the fact that people will be willing to travel with our constituencies because we hold a standard to what we consider to be safe. Is this the shining moment for them to step forward?
I think there's an opportunity right now, for regardless of your organization, without picking on anyone individually, to look at what your role is and how can you have the best long-term positive impact on the industry. And I think sometimes you do have to take a stand. And now is a time that we're hurting, and we're probably going to hurt more before things get easier. Yeah, absolutely. If it were me, if I was in charge of a large organization that had a lot of power, I would risk alienating some of my constituents to do the right thing for the industry, because that's why they exist, is to support the industry.
And as long as we also all understand, it won't be a large majority of the industry that would go this way, because a good amount of hotel owners are the political people who are touting the anti-mask agenda.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
And just, you're going to have to accept that, and you're going to have to point to that. You know, you're going to have to appoint, you know, because
Well,
listen,
it's happening though in the airlines. You have
Right.
Delta and Southwest who are 50 to 60% full, and that's it. And everybody I know is spending more money to fly Delta and Southwest and running from American.
It's interesting because I actually am getting on a plane in about 3 hours to go stay at a hotel. And it's going to be my first time out really since all of this started. So I'm curious to see what happens. But I will say, just as a takeaway, we talk a lot about marketing and communication. And based on this and a couple others that I've seen, people are forgetting about their confirmation letters. I have not received any information whatsoever about my upcoming visit that has to do with their current response.
Because they don't
That's
have any
great.
staff.
Is it a flag hotel?
They don't have any staff.
It is flagged.
There you go. That's the problem.
Flag is shut down.
yeah,
I can't
Every
touch
independent
anything
hotel I
with
know
flag.
is sending dedicated pre-arrival messages
True.
talking about their, what
But
they
I have
consider
seen
the
it
cleaning
in business
theater,
hotels.
right? Showing them all the things they're doing to keep them
Mhm.
safe, and
But
the
still-
expectations too.
Still, couldn't you even put a front desk agent or something like that in charge of, like, here's an email, just copy and paste it in, send
it's a
it from
brand
your front
violation,
desk
It's
account
brand violation.
to
depending
them.
on
but
the
you know what?
flag.
Hotel owners know they can violate brand stuff now because no brand people are
No,
looking.
there's nobody watching the
Right.
store.
Yesterday, so
Yeah, we,
free for all.
yep.
But how can they say that you can't communicate with your guest?
That's been
Uh,
an argument for a
That,
long
that
time.
database, by sending an email outside of the database of what they control for those who have unsubscribed and so forth, is a really big red.
Have you-
Yeah, but
Have you not gone down this rabbit hole with Lauren, like the original instigator?
Yeah.
instigator of the problem. But hey, here's an end around for you if you're interested. If you start doing any sort of messenger botting and so forth and redirect people in their communication with the hotel, that they can get the latest up-to-date information on your Facebook page associated with their arrival, and also through the bot, which is what we're using. Way world difference, because now we have level 1, level 2, and level 3 support of what's current, what's open, what's not open. This is what you need to know. This is what to expect. This is the protocols, all that stuff. Because I'm even taking promotion codes that I can't change and telling them that once you book this, call us so we can add the extra value that we can't add on the brand site that we can add when you land when you come in person. That's how bad brand lack of support is right now.
So, anyhow,
Mm-mm-mm.
this has
Meanwhile,
been a
back to
wicked
Grant.
bummer of a show, guys.
Do we have a booth
Hey,
to
you know
talk
what?
about?
This is okay.
Can I tell you one thing?
Vibranium. What is the word in Avengers, Stuart?
Vibranium.
Vibranium stick, and you just stand in the lobby, and anybody that doesn't wear a mask, whack them.
Whack-a-mole game.
This has been,
Because
been a
if I
rough-
don't get up and walk every hour and a half-ish, my knee is hell to pay right now. I got to keep moving according to the personal torturer that loves giving pain every day he shows up.
I think Holly had something to say.
So hey, there was a booth.
Holly,
that-
hey, Lauren.
Oh,
Holly's been
stop
trying to
talking,
say
Lauren.
something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
honestly, now it left me. Oh, this, so I sit on a bunch of boards with an accumulation of a bunch of hotel people. And I have to say, in general, Ed, this has been a sad week. I'm not exactly sure what all of the, perfect storm has been, but it's been a noticeably strange week. I've asked people what they think it is, and some have said it's because they're moving from the furlough to the permanent laid off.
There's been a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that's been driving it. Others is this news that, we're not even to phase 2 yet, and there's, this increase, which is going to make us take longer to recover. But it in general, so I agree. We need a morale boost for sure.
Well, I think one of the other things that is maybe a little less obvious to everyone is there hasn't been meaningful talk at the government level on what really is going to be done to stop the economy from falling apart. There's been some whispers, some just kind of thoughts on what's going to happen, but none of the people who really pushed through the first, 2 rounds of relief have really been out there pushing a strong agenda that has any type of support. So I have a feeling there's some hopelessness built in of, hey, we're really not, past this. And the answer isn't just straight up open up the economy, because there are winners and losers in that. Like bar owners, I'm sorry, you're not going to be a bar owner for a long time. And that's unfortunate, and something needs to be done for bar owners and their employees and all of that. So I think some of it could be is we're kind of in that plateau timeline wise where there's been no meaningful discussion of what's going to happen, which is sucking hope out of the room.
Well,
Yeah,
we emerged out of this, and we got our head slapped off. I mean, we thought we were, business. It was like, Stuart, when you're talking about Myrtle Beach, number one, numbers over last year, so on and so on, and then all of a sudden, boom! It seems like the first 3 months of us doing whatever we did was just a waste of time, because we're twice as worse as we are now, and we're getting worse faster than we were the entire time then. So, wow, all the suffering we went through then, that one didn't do any good for us. Now we're worse off for it. And now, to your point, Holly, they're talking about it's not furlough, it's bye-bye. And also, it's not about how to emerge, but how many are going to not emerge. 8,000 hotels, according to that one account. 71% of travel agents are never going to return. Now we're talking about the permanency of the impact, that we try to come out of this. And, like I said about my little, castaway thing, we tried to go over the reef and it didn't work. And now we're worse. Kind of thing is where we're at right now. It's we got slapped back down again, and there's no, we can fix it by doing this, we can fix it by doing that. There's no fix right now. It's a survivability. Can you?
But I think, for folks listening, that you just kind of destroyed any hopes they had. I would remind them to focus on controlling the things you can control. Because there's a lot of this we can't control the narrative in the media, and that's a big part of it. We can't control the timing of people have been furloughed for X number of weeks and they have to be either brought back or let go. Like we can't control that stuff, but we can control the messaging that we're pushing out to customers. We can go find customers. We can be proactive about how we train our staff and how we treat our guests and be hospitable. So I think put your energy, instead of wallowing in the misery, go put your energy into something positive. Go help your community, help the people that are hurting, help your guests, and go find new business. There's enough business out there for people to eat. You just got to work a little harder and a little differently than you did in the past.
Unless
Hey,
you're a
I'm more
brand
optimistic
hotel.
about it. I believe there's opportunities right and on everything. There is places to get business, and we're going back to older models, as I mentioned before. Like in some markets I have clients in, that we're just like, okay, that didn't. We're going to go back to what we were doing before because it's not emerging; it's sustaining, and we have to go back to the quarantines and everything else. So,
And I think it's important too to know, to Stuart's point about what's in your control, what that break even point is for your hotel. So in response to this being a depressing show, if there are any independent kind of hoteliers who don't have the resources from a management company brand listening to this show that need help with that, please reach out to me and we will help you with that for free. There's no cost to that. So if you guys need help with a break-even analysis, please reach out to us. I'll drop my email in the chat.
thank you. Lily.
Hey, Lily, bringing it up.
No, I think all of us have been doing that for a while. Yeah, it's been a lot of collaboration. And again, on a bright note, and Stuart, you brought this up weeks ago when we were in the middle of it. The collaboration and cooperation. I mean, face it, you had Tammy from Milestone, Stuart from Fuel Travel, me. We're all in a similar space in some capacities, and we are collaboratively working together to help anything that we can help each other on, and any clients that we have in relationship to each other, or people that just need help, as Liv pointed out, that don't have an ability to financially support that relationship. We're all there. Adele, you're looking at how to create training, so people can create that culture coming out of this that's going to be substantive for people to maintain that relationship. And, Holly, you're doing the training. Dean, he's taking over the world with MetaSearch. Just a little silly stuff. And then I don't know what Flip2 does, but they do something. But
Only, giving hotels something meaningful to talk to their audiences about that doesn't
something.
Something hopeful, something that shows lacking. Yeah.
Just dreaming. Doesn't matter if you're
twist-
open or closed.
To twist Robert's boop into this, but just only from a cumulative point of view, this is a wonderful time to truly in-depth explore your travel interests. You have the time and the capability. You're not traveling for whatever decisions you've made, but this certainly gives you a chance to explore so you don't miss the biggest ball of twine. You don't miss the opportunity to see something. You get to go over and do all the cool stuff and learn all the nifty stuff. We thrive on shows like Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives about that little gem of a restaurant that nobody knew around the corner because it looked generic in the strip mall or something, but it makes the most amazing whatever. These are things to discover so that when you do go and do stuff, you get to go over and find all the cool stuff you like to do.
Have you guys?
So why not take the opportunity while you have it to really dive into what is it you're interested in doing when you want to make that choice to travel?
Have you guys read the books by state that Robert's Boop article had?
Yes.
So I actually only went in because I wanted to see what kind of ridiculous book Florida was going to have. But South Carolina is my favorite.
What was it?
Bastard Out of Carolina. It's a depiction of abuse and deprivation
Spirit of the boop, Ed.
in the rural
Spirit of
South. I was expecting something like that for Florida.
Spirit of the boop. Spirit of the
yeah.
boop.
I reject your stereotype.
All right, guys, I have to head out.
All right, Lily, safe travels. We'd love to hear your stories when you get back next week.
Take
as to how that
videos.
all worked out
You
for
know,
you.
I'll be
Wear a
safe.
face mask, Lily.
Yes.
Yep.
Wear a
Oh,
face
yeah.
mask.
I have a whole pack. We just got a case of them, so I'm stashing them everywhere because I will forget. I don't usually leave the house, so it's just not a habit yet. So I just stash them everywhere so that I can always find one when I need it.
So, Lily, for those who want to know more about what you just referred to and how to reach out to you, how is it they can do that?
Sure. So you can find us online at tcrmservices.com, and you can email me at Lily, Lily, at tcrmservices.com. That's for all things day-to-day revenue management, and also our sister brand, Think Up Enterprises, where we do consulting and technology projects, and also our hospitality revenue management podcast for the episodes that I just referred to earlier.
I'm sure it's going to be soon to be award-winning, like the infamous Fuel Travel podcast. I'm just saying that probably.
Fingers crossed. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to race to see if I can do it at an earlier episode than Stuart did.
Oh,
Just-
wow.
Okay. Well, now.
Throw down the gauntlet.
So, Mr. Stuart Butler, since your name has come up in vain, where if they want to find you and Fuel Travel?
So the mothership is fueltravel.com. You can get there. You can get all our recent travel studies. We're going to be publishing the latest results on Wednesday of next week, including the mask data and some other interesting new questions. Fueltravel.com is the podcast. And yeah, you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Stuart Butler. Spelled S-T-U-A-R-T, not the wrong way.
And Stuart, I think you should suggest a different South Carolina book. I think be part of the solution.
Adele?
You know, there's a lot of good books in South Carolina. I'll get my wife to put together a good list. She likes a lot
Prince-
of based in
Prince of
Pawleys
Tides.
Island and Charleston.
Oh,
and
no, don't recommend that. It's a wonderful book, but it's not what you want to be known
It's
for.
sort of the same thing. There's a lot of books around that genre in South Carolina.
Mhm.
Okay,
So,
well, if you have any questions about the best way to manage your reputation, if you're having any critical problems right now and you want to make sure your reputation stays strong, I'd be happy to help anybody with any questions if you send it to me at Adele, A-D-E-L-E, like the singer, at aspirereputation.com.
Outstanding. Mr. Dean Schmidt, the leader of the new meta search campaigns that will take over the world.
Taking over the world, one meta search campaign at a time, right? So soon to be launched, metasearchmarketing.com and basecampmeta.com, putting together some programs, one of them designed towards training for both hoteliers and digital agencies within the industry, and the other one to help hotels run their marketing campaigns on Meta. In this day and age where we talked about the controlling the conversation so much, guys, direct bookings are a critical part of that. You've got to get that booking direct. You've got to own the guest. Yes, it's real easy to fall into that trap again where we sell our souls to the OTAs and say, please put heads in beds for me. But you really want to be able to embrace that and take that in, because there will be issues down the road. We know this, and you want to be able to control that conversation.
And for people that don't know, Dean has been a forefront leader in this in many capacities, in many platforms, in many brand organizations. So good advice.
Hey.
Holly, I don't often get to ask you this, but if people want to know more about you, where is it they can find you?
So Holly at scoutsimply.com is the easiest place. Dean, we need to talk because we're forever looking for people who want to delve more deeply into digital marketing, certainly in the meta search area. So I do have to say this is a little bit hilarious. One of the things I have ventured into a little bit is politics, taking my training to the political world. No, not like personal. Yeah, I mean, obviously I've delved into that, but expanding my training into the political world to the thunk.
Wow. Who would have thunk? Although you have kept me very much abreast as to the pros, cons, goods, bads, dark whites of everything. So I do appreciate actually following the stuff that you put up, because I don't feel it's biased. I think it's actually very much to the truth of the matter. So thank you very much.
When are you going
agree.
to start running for some political position?
Yeah, so I can't. Way too many skeletons in my closet, but what I can do is support and train others, and that's what I'm doing. It's sort of a blast.
Excellent. And Mr. Ed, not that Flip 2 has much to do these
Speaking of
days.
skeletons in their closet, is it?
I dissolve all mine with chemicals.
If they want to find you, Mr. Ed, where is it they can find you? What is it they can find about Flip 2?
You can learn about Flip2 by going to flip.to. You can find me on social media, Edward St. Ange. And Lauren Gray, if people want to watch a month and a half of 24-hour-a-day binge watching of this and all our past episodes, or want to
Seek
learn
therapy.
about you and your ninja marketing capabilities, where should they go?
At hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live, you can get a link to this and all previous episodes, now translated in 6 languages.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Did anyone see the post on LinkedIn about Lauren this week?
What's that? Oh, yeah. Hey, I got number
Lauren
1.
got an
Hotel Tech
accolade.
Report.
Talking of award winning, you want to tell people what you were
I
named
missed
for?
the Hotel Tech Report listed me as the number 1 consultancy.
Hey,
Oh, so happy
How
to hear
about
that.
that?
Look, you know what? Those checks do pay off. No, it's
it's amazing. It's amazing that happened
Yeah.
after he invited them on the show. I'm just saying.
Yeah. But you can't put much credit in their list because fuel wasn't even mentioned.
Oh, I see. Now that's where Stuart
in
was
Hotel
so.
Marcus.
Stuart wasn't
Yeah.
mentioned, so all of a sudden he's got a problem with the consult. You know, it's
Yeah.
okay.
No,
Got to
I
question
just
the
like
validity of
when
the
good
data.
things happen to good people.
So anyway, we are translated
Well
into 6
deserved.
languages, and we will be starting up a hospitality channel that will be a pre-recorded broadcasting like we've been doing for HSMA as APAC and EU. We're going to be doing scheduling forward. The podcast will be going on it. The previous week's episode will go on the following week, but it'll be this perpetual scheduling of stuff. So you'll see a lot of stuff. So Holly, anything you want to throw into that hopper? And Dean, as you start building your stuff, if you want to throw that in, Adele, same thing. You know, we'll just put it as a perpetual broadcasting of stuff. So that people don't miss out on the fact that we have that home-based channel for all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the podcast is doing well. Through Holly's sales, she just released a new one. The marketing one just went out, and so too the revenue management one went out. We got a new podcast coming up today. We're getting growing audiences on that. I don't know if anybody knows the podcast statistics, but year over year, it's up 14% year over year on podcast listenership. So people are using it as a resource more so.
Because they
even
ran
last
out of
year,
Netflix.
it's even stronger. So.
Totally.
No new
Yeah, so
target
it's all doing good. So, anyways, thank you everyone for joining us this week. Potentially, I don't know what our food and beverage guy is. If not, we'll find another one because I do want to get food and beverage into the dialogue a little bit more. But by all means, if anyone wants to be a co-host, guest host, have a suggestion for co-host, then
We'll have more
more
data next week if you want Melissa back to talk about.
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah, have her come back next
Have
week.
you
We'll
talked
do-
to her?
Next
Will
week will
she
be
come
Melissa with
back?
the latest numbers. Okay, cool. In, we're good. We'll do that, and then we'll. No, it's always. We like Melissa better than. I mean,
No, I
it's
was
always great to
asking
have Melissa on,
Stuart if he's spoken to Melissa and if she's willing to come back.
Yeah.
She
Do
is,
we have
she
to pay
told
her
me she
money
has
again? Because last time we had to
4
pay her money.
minutes
She's like, I ain't
left,
going
so-
back no way until we give her that check. Anyways, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate it very much. Again, this is all going to be replayed. You'll be able to see it. You'll be able to go on multiple channels. And of course, the podcast, we do the recap for it. So until next Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, thank you everyone. We look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Bye, guys.
Hi, good to see you
Cheers.
again.